everybody, and welcome to The View from the Top. We've got the most amazing show for you today, and it is on the biggest bombshell that I think has hit our industry in God knows how many years. And of course, we're talking about the rumor that has come out from reports in the Financial Times and elsewhere that there may be a split at EY, Ernst & Young as was, between the audit division and the non-audit division. This could be huge, huge news, and we're going to be devoting a large section of the show to it in a moment. Obviously, we've got our regular immigration and tax updates and our breaking news first. But wherever you are in the world, and we're expecting record numbers, then do let us know who's there. I've noticed actually in the comments that we've also got some spam coming in. I apologize for that. We're busy trying to get rid of the spam at the same time as allowing the normal comments to come through. But we've already got over 220 people in the audience. We're expecting massive numbers today. So I'm not going to waste time. We're going to get straight into it. We are talking about nothing less than the future of the Big Four. We're going to be talking about what's been going on at EY and how that is going to impact, well, EY, their partners, their employees, their clients, their competitors, and indeed our entire industry. This is going to be a major discussion, and we really want your help. We want to crowdsource your views, your thoughts, your perspectives, your wisdom. So you know what to do, everybody. Join the conversation, write in the comments box. Let us know what your thoughts are, what your views are, where you are. I see Sandra's in Hilton Head Island. Nice one there. Hi to Sue. Hi to Prakash. Prashant. We've got people coming from all corners of the world. Frederick from, that's too quick to even say, Everett from Mexico. People coming in from all over the world. So let me just tell you, I'm going to move on. Let me just tell you what we've got lined up for you next week. Next week, we've got a section on digital transformation, how mobility programs can be transformed through digitalization. And we're going to use not one, not two, but 3 separate case studies next week to talk about digital transformation. And that's just part 1. And then when we come back in part 2 of that show, which will be a following 2 weeks' time, we're going to do 3 more case studies. So we've got some great stuff lined up for you. Talking about digital transformation, I thought, given there's so many of you here today, I'll just give you a little bit of a heads up of something really, really exciting. How many of you are familiar with doing cost estimates? And it's a pretty tricky process, and you go to your provider, they produce a cost estimate and they charge you, etc. And it can be a bit of a pain. We are launching a radical new version of cost estimates, and get this version of cost estimates for our standard, I have to say this, for standard Benevo clients only, but this version of cost estimates will have no cost. You'll be able to do unlimited cost estimates without any incremental cost. So we've got something, as I said, really, really exciting. We're going to be launching that in a few weeks' time, but I just want to give you guys a heads up. Anyway, we're going to get into the subject of the moment, but I also wanted to let you know that here, not only do you get all the information about what's going in our industry, but you can also get CPE codes. So whether you want your codes from ERC, from your worldwide ERC, GMS and CRP codes, or whether you want an HRCI or SHRM codes, they are provided by our good friends at Rocket Mortgage. That's all the information there. So I'll leave that up for a moment. So if you want to get your GMS or CRP codes, if you want to get your HRCI codes, or you want to get your SHRM code, I suggest you just take a screenshot of this screen now, or just take a photo of it, and then you've got the codes that you need. Anyway, without further ado, I also want to just get on to talking about some breaking news, because we always like to have just a little bit of breaking news every week. So what's been happening in the wonderful world of global mobility this week? So congratulations to everybody who has been promoted, everyone who has started a new job, who's starting new careers. Excellent news. If there's any news you want to share with the industry, then send me a message and I'll try and make sure we get it in our breaking news in a future week. But we're going to move on because there's so much to talk about. But before we get on to the big subject of the future of the Big Four, let's bring in, as ever, our very special, our resident immigration expert, the one and only Julie Onslow Cole. So you know how it works. And for those of you who are new to the show, maybe you don't know how it works, but hit the heart button. I see people doing it already. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's give a really big, big welcome to the one and only Julia Onslow Cole. Hey, Julia, how are you doing?
Really well, thanks.
Good. And where in the world are you today?
Oh, I'm in the Fragham London office today.
Yeah. Okay, back in the office. So, and what are you going to be talking to us about today?
So I'm just going to be giving you a quick UK immigration update. And I wanted to give a big shout out to my colleague, Katie Good, for helping me. 2 months ago, I gave an update on UK immigration. Actually, to be honest, we don't actually often do UK immigration, but that was just before the launch of the Global Business Mobility Route. That was launched on the 11th of April. And you'll recall that I explained that that route had 5 subcategories, and they were largely a kind of reappraisal of existing categories. So those 5 were intra-company transfers for employees and graduates, the old sole representative or representative of an overseas company, tier 5 international agreement, and then the only new route was very niche for a secondment worker. Now, none of those 5, which were launched on the 11th of April, lead to settlement, but you can bring your family member with you or members with you. And the idea is that they're sort of temporary assignments, but there is flexibility to switch. And you could switch in country to skilled worker, which is the sponsored route, or global talent, where you have to have an endorsing body like Technation. But I just want to use a couple of minutes to talk about these 2 additional routes, which are outside of this global business mobility route. So the first of these 2 is a high potential individual, which was launched on the 30th of May. And I received numerous questions on this on LinkedIn. I've had lots and lots of messages. So to qualify for this category, the high potential individual, which was launched on the 30th of May, you have to have graduated in the last 5 years with a bachelor, master's or PhD from a designated list. Now, the Home Office call it the top global university, and there's about 50 universities on that list, and they are compiled on the basis that those universities came first in 2 out of 3 different top 50 rankings. Now, they're mainly US universities, and the LinkedIn messages I've been getting are, oh, but I went to this university, will that count? And unfortunately not. You have to go have been at those designated universities. You have to have been there within the last 5 years, graduated. And then if you've got a bachelor degree, you're allowed a 2-year visa, and a PhD, a 3-year visa. You can bring your dependent family members, and you can work and study, and you can be self-employed. The process, we think, is going to be very straightforward. You just got to really prove that you've been at those universities and graduated. There is an English language requirement, which should be fine, particularly if you've been studying at a US university. But it doesn't lead to settlement. And any time you spend in the UK on this category doesn't lead to settlement either. So it's really a route that either you have to go home after 2 or 3 years, or you can springboard on another. And tomorrow I'm talking at a Westminster Parliament debate whether or not this really serves economic purposes of really, does it really underpin growth in the UK? And I would say that, there is a lot of opportunity, to be honest, to be a lot wider than this scheme has been. And hopefully that might be something the government will consider. And then the second route is called the Scale-Up Visa. That's going to be launched on the 22nd of August, and we're still waiting for some particulars. These are for highly skilled individuals who've been recruited by businesses to help them scale up. The scale-up company has to go through a whole verification process, and this company will have to show that in a 3-year period, ending on the date of the application, that they grew by 20%, and at the beginning they had at least 10 employees. And then when the individual then applies, if the company is allowed to be a scale-up sponsor, they will get initially 2 years. But after 6 months, only 6 months, they actually can leave the sponsor, and they have freedom to then go and work for another employer. And they've got to earn the equivalent of 33,000 a year for more than 50% of the time they've held that visa. So again, we need to sort of look at all the detail, but it does seem that there's aspects of this that are quite cumbersome, we really need to have a look and see what's happening. But I think it is worth, today just highlighting these 2 new routes and reminding people of the global business mobility routes.
That's really helpful, Julia. There's been a few comments in the comments box with questions for you. We haven't got time to take them now. I'll leave it to you. Maybe
I'll write them down and I'll go back.
If you respond back to them. Okay, so Julia, thank you so much for your update. We're rushing through the immigration and tax sections today because we've got so much to talk about on the future of the Big Four. But we're going to move on. We're going to bring on to another legend of our industry. We're going to bring on Pat Jurgens, who's going to tell us all about the latest tax updates from around the world. So everybody, you know what it's like. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say a really big thank you to Julia and a really big, big welcome to Pat Jurgens. Good to see you. Good to see you. Another refugee from the Big Four, like me, and indeed like Julia.
I know. And I definitely had reasons to leave public accounting, but I certainly do miss aspects of it for sure.
Okay. So, but you haven't left tax. So give us your tax update, Pat.
Yes. In a nod to Charles Dickens, I'm going to be talking about the tax tales of 2 countries. And the first is Germany, who's providing some tax relief. The new German government agreed tax measures providing relief to taxpayers. And this was intended to offset the high cost of energy due to the Ukraine war with Russia. So the relief package has a number of different things. There's a temporary reduction in the energy tax they assess on fuel. There's eliminating the levy on renewable energy. And there's special one-time payments to help individuals meet expenses. So there's a cash payment of 300 euros payable to all working persons. They've sweetened the child allowance, 100 euros in addition to the basic child benefit. And they're also substantially discounting public transit passes for 3 months during the summer to encourage public transport. Again, try to conserve on energy use, given the circumstances there in Europe. Of interest to global mobility tax professionals, employees will see an increased standard allowance of 1,200 euros, and the tax exempt amount that's part of the tax computation has gone up to 10,347 euros. The tax rates themselves aren't changed, but the top rate is still about 47% after you consider the solidarity surcharge. But the tax relief will give perhaps maybe 200 euros per year per employee. So nothing to get too excited about. But these changes are effective as of the beginning of this year, January 2022. So these are retroactive changes. So for those of you who have German employees, you want to double check that the payroll changes have been implemented, and if any hypothetical calculations are done for outbound German expats, that you might want to update those as well. So contrast Germany with Sri Lanka, who is now implementing tax hikes. They've announced several proposals just at the end of May to implement in the near term. So Sri Lanka is in a much different circumstance than Germany. They're experiencing an economic crisis with very high inflation, somewhere around 40%, and the government defaulting on foreign debt. So they need to increase tax collections, and they are seeking a bailout from the IMF. So of all the various tax hikes that are proposed, probably the ones that are most of interest to global mobility professionals, cutting the personal allowance from 3 million local currency to 1.8 million, and the tax rates are going up. So there used to be a range of 6 to 18%, and now they will go from 4 to 32%. So the top rate's going from 18 to 32%. And also of note, they had stopped mandatory payroll withholding, PAYE, at the beginning of 2020. Expecting employees to just make provisional tax payments. Well, they're bringing that back because they realize they need to accelerate the tax collections to help out with government finances. So once these proposals are implemented, the effective date is targeted to be October 1st of this year. And so again, for inbound assignees to Sri Lanka, you may want to consider how that top rate's going to hit your mobility tax accruals. So completely different circumstances, completely different reactions to economic distress. Just thought it was interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, Charles Dickens, Tale of Two Countries, one going one way, one going the other. Pat, fascinating. Actually, I noticed we had people from Sri Lanka in the audience as well. So no doubt that we might get some comments there to give us more depth or perspective on your thoughts too. But Pat, it's been great having you on the show. We're going to move on to talk about the future of the Big Four, and shout out to everybody in the audience because we really want you to help and give us your comments and your perspectives. Anyway, Pat, it's been a pleasure as ever having you on the show. We're going to say goodbye to you. So everybody, you know what to do. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say a big thank you to Pat Jurgens as we move on to this subject of the future of the Big Four. Right. So where do we start? This is such a big subject, and probably like me, you read about it on LinkedIn, or you got a message, or you saw it in the papers, and we saw this huge story about a potential, and I stress the word potential, split at EY. So let me just start off. Maybe I'll just start off with a caveat. Let's just put that out there. And the caveat is this, is that we have no inside knowledge, okay? We're working on stuff that has come from publicly available sources and from personal experiences, and maybe one or two sort of off-the-record conversations here and there, but there's nothing, nobody knows what's going to happen. I want you to absolutely understand that nobody knows what is going to happen, okay? So let's just start with that as a bit of a caveat. And then the other thing I want to do was just give you a bit of my personal perspective and background, just so that you know. I think a lot of people in the audience will know me from my time here at Benevo, and also previously from my time at the Forum for Expatriate Management. But cut me open and go back many years, and I spent the best part of 30 years working in the Big Four. I started my career in the predecessor firm to PwC, Coopers & Lybrand, at a time when there were actually the Big Eight. I was there for I think about 8 or 9 years. I then went to BDO, where I was a partner there for 10 years. I then went to Arthur Andersen, and I was a partner there for about 10 years until they split with Accenture and indeed until Sarbanes-Oxley and Enron caused the end to that great firm. And then I was a partner at EY for, again, it must be about 6 or 7 years before I founded FEM. So I have worked at partner level in a number of firms and in pretty senior positions. So I'd like to think I do have a pretty good idea of the dynamics of how these firms work. So maybe I should just start off by giving you, for those of you who don't know the Big Four so well, just a little bit of background about how the Big Four operate, and just, as I said, just a little bit about them so we can put things in context. The first thing you need to understand about the Big Four is, and this might sound blindingly obvious, is they are big. Okay, the Big Four are massive. Maybe they should be renamed the Massive Four. Okay, to give you an idea, EY, which is the one we're going to be focusing on today, has got somewhere in the region of 312,000 employees and 40 billion of revenue. Okay, they've got, I'm trying to pull up the number here. I think they've got 13,000 partners. They've got 700 offices in 150 countries. Okay, so these organizations are huge, and EY, they're not the biggest, but they're all, let's, for the sake of it, just say they're all much of a muchness, and they're all pretty massive. Okay, the next thing you need to understand about the Big Four is that they are actually not global organizations. We all think of EY, PwC, KPMG, Deloitte as being big monolithic organizations. That's not the way they are structured legally. Legally, they are individual partnerships, typically on a country by country basis, but in some cases on a region by region basis. As it happens, EY is probably the most globalized of the Big Four in terms of their management structures, but none of them are one organization in the same way that, say, Accenture or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or somebody might be one organization globally. They are not. They are individual. And that means that partners tend to share profits locally. There might be some element of cost sharing so that the profit numbers can be helped out if one country is doing particularly badly, or one person needs a particular level of extra pay. But by and large, they are structured as individual country partnerships. So you immediately get, and this is fundamental to understanding how the Big Four work, you immediately get the concept of matrix management. Anybody working in a line role in a Big Four firm is reporting up the line to the head of their division, let's say the head of audit or the head of corporate finance or the head of global mobility or people advisory service. They're reporting up that line, but they're also reporting into their country managing partner, into their geography. That makes them very difficult organizations to manage. And one of the problems that the people in the top line roles have is they have a lot of accountability, but very, very little power. It's actually very hard to get stuff done if the geography doesn't want the stuff to be done. So you have this dynamic going on in the organization. In case you're feeling sorry for them at this point, the other way of looking at it is they are also immensely profitable. Okay, average partner pay at a Big Four firm is, and I know the UK numbers most because they are actually publicly available data, is around $1 million per partner. Okay, and some of the most senior partners will be earning 2 or 3 times that, and indeed at the very top level even more. Okay, so nobody is on the street here. Okay, these are firms where people are earning very substantial sums of money, and they are very, very complex organization. So to give you what else do we know about EY? Let's focus in on EY specifically. With EY, what we know is there was a leak. There's an article that came out in well, it was originally, I think, on some paper, and then it was picked up by the Financial Times and the Australian Financial Review. And basically what it said is that EY has appointed two major investment banks, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, to look at their options of splitting out the non-audit services from the audit services. And to give you an idea of context, as I said, EY's got about 320,000 employees. Okay, the non-audit side of the firm, roughly speaking, is 2/3 of the revenue. And if anybody disagrees, this is the information I've got from publicly available data. But if you disagree, you want to correct me, then please do. But my understanding is that the non-audit side is about double the size of the audit side. So roughly speaking, of that 40 billion of revenue, 26 billion is non-audit and about 14 billion is audit. So that's the size. The non-audit size has about 165,000 people in it. And then in addition, you've got about 40 or 45,000 people who are split doing services for both the audit and the non-audit side. I mean, they might be receptionists or security staff or printing people or design people, people who are sort of, you know, going across both functions. But if we look purely at the people who are in the non-audit side, as I said, we're talking about 165,000. So the first point to make here is if there is to be a split, and obviously we've got a recent precedent with PwC spinning out Vialto, but Vialto was tiny by comparison. Vialto was 6,000 people, which we thought was massive. But here we're talking about a minimum of 165,000 people plus a share of whatever support staff there might be. So we're talking about a massive, massive split. So what do we know? Okay, we know that this leak came out. It actually came out when the CEO of EY, Carmen de Sabio, was actually attending the Davos World Economic Forum, which is probably not the best time for a news item like that to come out when he was clearly very, very busy. So who knows whether it came out as a deliberate leak. Maybe somebody wanted to get the price up or to flush out buyers. My guess, though, is this has come out. Who knows how it's come out, whether it's come out from the investment banking side or the accounting firm side, but it's come out unintentionally. It's certainly got the whole world talking about what exactly is going to happen. Okay, so that raises a couple of questions. So what we know is they're looking at it. Okay, what we don't know is whether it's going to happen, and if so, what exactly is going to happen. But what else do we know? What we do know is a bit about history. Okay, this has happened before. Back in 2000, EY span out its consulting practice to Capgemini for, I think, around 11 billion from memory. And around the same time, Anderson and what was then Anderson Consulting, now Accenture, split. And that was just a split, so no money passed hand at all. Okay, so we've had a couple of precedents, and more recently, of course, we've had PwC spinning out Vialto, and we've had a couple of the other firms spinning out some of their insolvency practices. So there has been split for these sorts of spin out. But that then raises the question, why? Why is this happening? Why are people even considering spinning out their non-audit practice from the audit practice? Let's try and deep dive into why this is happening. Step back, okay? These firms are very, very old. I think EY, if you go back to all its predecessors, dates back to about 1849 or something like that. So we're talking about, 180 years or so these firms have been around. And when you start an accounting firm, you're the auditor, and you're doing a bit of audit work, and then the client comes along to you and says, well, actually, can you give me a bit of tax advice? Can you give me a bit of this advice, a bit of that advice? And naturally, the firms grow. So they grow from doing, if you like, traditional accounting and auditing work, and then they start doing other bits and pieces. And those bits and pieces grow and grow and grow. And gradually, they become bigger. Okay. And then then you start getting problems because you get conflicts between audit and non-audit. You get regulation steps in, because when I was earlier in my career in the profession, it was all about cross-selling. You all wanted to cross-sell non-audit services into your audit clients. And in fact, you got bonuses, you got extra reward if you could cross-sell. Okay. But there is actually a fundamental conflict between audit and non-audit services. And I think we need to understand this as to why there is this fundamental conflict between an audit service and a non-audit service. And let me explain that. Let me just give you a couple of simple analogies. Imagine, let's talk about sports, and let's talk about a sport like baseball or soccer. Okay. You've got the people who are on the team who want to hit the ball out the field. Okay. If it's baseball, or they want to score the goal if it's soccer. And that is, if you like, your consulting service. You've also then got the umpire or the referee, and that is the audit service. Okay. The aim of the auditor is to be independent and to provide a cool head and to basically say, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. Okay. That is fundamentally different to what the consulting practice is trying to do, which is trying to hit the ball out of the park for their client. Okay. So, and you'd never dream of having a situation where your sports team could also choose the audit, could also choose the umpire or the referee. Okay. If you don't like that analogy, I'll give you another analogy. Okay. Let's imagine that the client is a tourist, a very upmarket tourist who wants to be taken around, and they hire a limo. Okay. The chauffeur of the limo will be doing everything they can to get to the client wherever they want to go and to make sure that they have the best possible experience. Okay. So if you want to take the analogy, the non-audit service is the chauffeur, is the limo driver. The audit service is the traffic cop or the traffic warden. Okay. Their job is to make sure that the limo doesn't park where it's meant to park, where it's not meant to park. They won't park your car for you, but they'll tell you that, and maybe issue you with a warning or a fine if you've parked in the wrong place. So you've got this fundamental conflict where audit and non-audit services are fundamentally incompatible. That has been realized by regulators all over the world, who basically say, if it's an audit client, you can't do something. So for example, you can't provide payroll services, you can't provide global mobility services, you can't provide executive reward. There's a limit on what consulting services you can provide if you're meant to be independent. Okay. And this has become a huge issue because the non-audit side, well, the audit side want to maintain their independence and they're concerned about conflicts and they want to be independent. But look at it from the other side. If you are the advisory side, you don't want to find that you certainly can't work for certain clients. Now, when I was at EY, and I'm sure, and I don't know whether they still use the same terminology, and other firms might use different terminology, but EY used to refer to Channel 1 and Channel 2 clients. Okay, I don't know, that may well have gone, but the concept is the same. A Channel 1 client is an audit client, and a Channel 2 client is a client that's not an audit. Now, what that would mean for me as a consultant is I could not provide services to anybody who was Channel 1. Okay, so immediately, assuming that I've got a 25% audit share, 25% of the market is off limits. But it's more than that, because there will be other clients that I would like to target for Channel 2, but somebody on the audit side is also targeting them for Channel 1 as an audit client. So I will be told, obviously there's a bit of a debate, I will be told, actually, even though that's not an audit client, you can't sell your services to it because it could be an audit client. It's a potential audit client. It's what they call a pursuit. Okay, so that 25% that's off limits might go up to, say, I don't know, 33% for the sake of argument. So a third of the market might be off limits. And that is very, very frustrating. And clearly that's one of the benefits that someone like Vialto is going to see in their new world. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. But EY has got a particular problem in that EY is massive in auditing in Silicon Valley. So if we look at some of EY's audit clients, I'm just trying to find something here. Yeah, so some of the EY's audit clients, and again, I apologize if I've got this wrong, but it's what I seem to have gathered from public information. EY audit clients like Amazon, Google, Oracle, Salesforce, Workday, Apple, Netflix. Okay, so massive Silicon Valley companies that quite often the consulting side will want to partner with, but they won't be able to partner with. They won't be able to partner with Amazon Web Services on some project if it's an audit client. So there is a major conflict going on. So in other words, from EY's point of view, working with big tech can be quite severely curtailed by the fact that these might be audit clients. So I said we've got these conflicts going on. The other issue that comes out of all this, of course, is relative profitability. Audit is typically a slow growth business. You know, you're not going to grow the audit business much. You know, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but the market doesn't grow in the same way that the consulting or the other services will grow. And the other services tend to be more profitable. They're also a lot less risky. I mean, auditors get fined all the time. I saw in the UK, there were a couple of big fines issued just today to one of the big four. And, you know, these fines are coming out in every country pretty much every month. One of the big four is getting fined for some audit failing. Okay, so you've got a situation where two divisions. One division is much more profitable than the other, is growing faster, and is in a regulatory free environment. The other division is growing slower, is less profitable, and is heavily regulated, and fines are coming out. Now, when I was talking to one of the partners in one of the firms, the level of frustration was such that he said to me, and he was talking about the difference in profitability between non-audit and audit. And he said, I might as well just find my favorite audit partner and give him a new Mercedes every year. Okay, I mean, that is the sort of level of difference. So you're seeing these frustrations coming up. So what will happen? Will it split? I mean, well, we'll get into that in a moment. But you can see that from an audit perspective, they probably don't want to split. Because from an audit perspective, why would you want to split from a unit that is much more profitable than you, that is subsidizing you, and to be honest, is sexier in terms of career path for your employees? On the other hand, if you're the other side of the coin, if you're on the advisory side, why would you want to stick with a division that actually is cramping your style because it's stopping you stopping you going into a whole bunch of new clients? So, you know, so those are the issues that are there. I mean, you know, people have tried different ways of cleaning this up. And I've seen those comments about this. People have tried, you know, find ways of cleaning it up. And we've got, you know, regulatory rules, and there's rules that are saying that, for example, that you have to operationally split audit and non-audit. But this is much bigger than that. This is the future. And if you're in the consulting side, you're probably also looking at somebody like Accenture, who has grown massively, probably 10 or 20-fold since it was spun out of Anderson. Or indeed, you know, you're looking at some of the others. I mean, in our own industry, of course, we've got Vialto, which by all accounts, everything I'm hearing is beginning to do really well. And, you know, and good luck to them. I'm sure the others are looking at that and saying, well, actually, we'd quite like a bit of private equity too and have the opportunities to go out there. So that raises the question then, what are the options? What could EY actually do? What are the split options open to EY? Now, bigger brains than mine are working on this. They've appointed, so we're told, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. Now, to my mind, that makes me think that this deal will happen. Because you tend not to appoint JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs if you're just sort of mulling over the idea. This sounds like they're really looking at it. And obviously there's a lot of incentive, not least from the bank's point of view, to get this over the line. But what are the options? Well, it seems to me there's probably 3 or 4 different options that we could have. I mean, you could have a trade sale. You could have PE, you could have an IPO, you could have some form of split of, share of those ones. Let's look at those and think about what is most likely. And I'd be very interested in, in all your views as we go through. I mean, the first one is a trade sale. Okay. So if we're selling out a business that is turning over $26 billion a year with 165,000 staff, who's going to buy it? Okay, I mean, who's going to be out there buying EY consulting services? Well, Microsoft bought, what do they call Activision recently, didn't they, for 70 billion. So there are companies out there that will do big deals like that, big trade deals. So we could see somebody coming out. But if I had to guess, I would say a trade sale is probably the least likely option. Okay. So what's the next option? Okay. The next option would be private equity. Okay. And obviously we've seen private equity come in. We saw private equity, CDR buying what is now Vialto from PwC for reportedly 2.2 billion. Okay. So, it can be done. That was a very, very complex structure. Because remember what I said at the beginning, these are not one unit. These are individual partnerships in 150, 160 countries that have got to be worked through. So it is possible that something be done with private equity. It would be a huge deal, maybe 10 times the size, 20 times the size of the Vialto deal. So a huge, huge deal. There probably aren't that many private equity companies that can actually do a deal of that size. I mean, it would be a huge, huge deal to do. So that's one option, I suppose, private equity, although it's hard to see how they would do it. They'll probably have to have maybe be a few private equity houses coming together. I don't know. The other issue with a private equity house, of course, is that private equity pretty much only ever go into a deal if they can work out what their exit route might be. So, they went in with Vialto. I'm sure that CD&R are thinking to themselves, well, 5-10 years down the road, what is our exit going to be it to another private equity or be it to an IPO or something? Who knows what their plans are? But with this, what would be the exit route if a private equity company came in and took all of EY? Again, possible. Everything's possible. The third alternative is an IPO. So you could have that. I mean, that again would be hugely complicated. It would be one of the biggest IPOs of all time, probably dwarfing something like the Goldman Sachs IPO of years ago, just the size of it. But that could be something that would happen, and that would be hugely, hugely exciting. So that's an option. The fourth option, which is probably the disaster option for the EY Audit Partners, is that the EY Consulting Partners do what the Andersen Consulting Partners did to Andersen, which is to say, we're just splitting. We don't want to get any money. We just want to split into a separate firm, and we're going to go to arbitration to say, you go your way, we'll go our way, and no money will pass hand. I mean, I tell you, I was a partner at Andersen at the time that Andersen and what became Accenture split. No money, apart from a very trivial amount in the context, passed hands. And, and the whole windfall opportunity that the audit partners could have if they sold off EY would disappear if the thing got nasty and went to arbitration and there was that sort of decision. I don't think it'll come to that, but that is the nightmare scenario for EY. The other option, which might be quite a likely one, is that EY could find a halfway house and say, well, actually, we're not going to spin off all of the practice. We're going to salami slice. Maybe we'll spin out the consulting. Maybe we'll spin out some of the tax consulting practice. Maybe we'll spin out the global mobility practice, but we won't split out the whole thing. And it might even be spun out different ways. So the consulting practice might be sold to private equity A or IPO'd in A. The mobility practice go in a different direction. That's more complex, but that might be more eatable. That might be more doable. As I said, it's salami slicing. So those are some of the things that we could look at. Let's have a look at some of the comments that have been coming in. So here's one. I'll just take this comment here from Mike Hibbard. At a practical level, the Big Four cannot integrate into customer systems. There is also a massive challenge when companies change their auditor, as the outgoing and incoming auditor are prohibited from non-audit services for circa 2 years during the changeover. Absolutely great point. I mean, that's another reason why they're going to need to split at some point, because the frustration on the non-audit side of the things that you cannot do is just going to build up. Let's take this comment here from Mary. She says, splitting up makes sense. Currently, it sounds like audit businesses slows down growth of non-audit business. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually did a poll on LinkedIn, Mary, to say, do you think they should split? And it was about 80% of the people, it's not a scientific poll, thinks that they should split. So, I mean, that's, it's one of the things, it's going to be incredibly difficult to do. But again, anything is possible as you sort of work it out and as you get all the minds working on it. Now, I was talking to a very senior partner in one of the firms. I won't say who to spare blushes. It was a very confidential conversation. But I was talking to somebody, and this person was absolutely convinced that it will not happen. Absolutely 100%, it will not happen. And let me explain his reason as to why the split will not happen. I think the first thing that he made, the point he made, and this is actually a quote from our conversation, is the EY Audit Partners would be mad to vote for this. And his argument would be, why would the EY Audit Partners vote to A, make themselves less profitable, B, means they've got less place where they can spread the risk, the regulatory risk, because it's just going to be on them, not everybody else. Their cost overheads are going to be going up relative to their fee income. As I said, their income is going to go down. Why would they ever want to do that? And the other thing is that there's no real career for junior people, because loads and loads of people, including me actually back in the day, join these firms in the audit division, and then as quickly as they can try and get out of it. In my case, I got out into tax after 18 months, but loads of people go in to audit because they think it's a great way to get a general business career. And yeah, as Jeremy said, how will you encourage talent to go to an audit-only firm? So, I mean, that is so right. And that is the reason why, as this person said, EY Audit Partners would be mad to vote for this. But why I disagree, respectfully disagree, and this is someone I admire and respect very much, but why I respectfully disagree with him is I think I can think of two reasons why EY Audit Partners would not be mad to vote for this. The first is that they're going to get a huge windfall. If we're talking about a deal that could sell for, I don't know, let's say 50 billion, 70 billion, 100 billion, who knows? That's a lot of billion. Somebody once said, a billion here and a billion there, pretty soon you're talking serious money. Okay. So, and normally when you're a partner in one of these firms, as they put it, you come in with nothing and you leave with nothing. You don't buy into any goodwill. You don't own any shares. You just earn a lot of money, a very, very handsome sum of money whilst you're there. But at the end, then you retire and you don't have any equity at the end of it. When you sell, what you're effectively doing is taking a snapshot value and you're crystallizing the value at that day. So the EY partners who sell, yes, they might be less profitable, but my gosh, they're going to get one hell of a windfall when they do. Now, that is going to attract a lot of people, especially the more senior partners who got less years left of earning the income and therefore would like the capital that they'll get on a sale much more. The second reason why I think that this will happen is the EY audit partners are only 1/3 of the total. The non-audit partners are 2/3. So if it goes to a vote of the partners, 2/3 of the partners will be saying yes. And if it goes to a simple majority, then they are outvoted. If it's not a simple majority and they block it, then you're going to end up with an Anderson Accenture situation where Anderson tried to block Accenture leaving, and the Accenture side, or Anderson Consulting as it was called then, was so cross, they said, so what with that? I nearly used a bad phrase. They said, frigging hell, we're not sticking with that. We're going to go to arbitration because you're holding us hostage. You're not letting us leave. And they went to arbitration and left paying nothing. So EY Audit Partners, my take to them would be, if the non-audit partners want to do it and they're the majority, then for heaven's sake, go along with them. Otherwise, you might risk ending up with absolutely nothing. So what will this then mean for the audit business? Okay, and we're going to come on to the impact for the audit business and the non-audit business. Okay, so let's assume they split. E&Y split into an audit business and a non-audit business. Now we've got EY, so one business could be called E, the other could be called Y. So we just split EY. That was easy. We don't have to pay anybody a fortune for the name. Okay, so the audit business E. Okay, what are they going to do? They're going to be a very regulated business. Okay, it's going to be a hard business for them, especially if the others don't follow suit. But my guess is that once they do, the others will be forced to follow suit, maybe by regulators, maybe by client pressure. And they're going to be positioning themselves as, if you like, the pure play audit practice, the wonderful auditor, the best quality auditor. They'll be investing whatever they can in the technology, and they will become, if you like, the conscience of the profession. So that's how the audit business will position themselves. By the way, just on a tangent on this, but I think it's quite an important tangent. People say that one of the reasons you have a regulatory problem is that for some reason, the non-audit fee taints the audit fee. Okay, it taints audit independence. The auditor shouldn't be allowed to cross-sell other services, because by cross-selling other services, they are tainting their own independence. From my experience, that is actually rubbish. I have never yet come across an audit partner who cares more about selling in non-audit services than he does in actually retaining the audit. Okay, the thing that taints audit independence is not the non-audit fee, it is the audit fee. Okay, that would be my strong view. And if I was a regulator, and obviously I'm not, if I was a regulator, I would actually abolish the audit fee completely. And I would have a situation where the auditor is appointed by the stock exchange or some other regulatory authority, and you don't get to choose who your auditor is. Let me give you an analogy. Okay. Let's say you want to take your driving test. You can't just go along and say, I'm going to choose who's going to do my driving test, and I'm just going to give them some money myself and they can then give it to me. No, it is approved by a body. Or I'll give you another example that I don't know what other countries have, but we have it here in the UK, is all schools are independently checked by a body. We call it Ofsted, the organisation or the Office for Standards in Education. A school can't go along and say, oh, I want to choose who's going to audit me and give me my report. No, it's done by an independent body. That is the problem. That is actually fundamentally the problem with the audit profession. It's not the non-audit fee that taints audit independence, it's the audit fee that taints audit independence. Anyway, that's a tangent and it's not one to get into today. But the point is, if we have an independent audit business, it will position itself as being pure play and will be going for all the business it can with no other conflicts. It won't have the conflicts of, if you like, the Channel 2 clients, and will be looking very, very, pretty as a result, taking the moral high ground. And of course, they'll have all that money from the sale. Okay. What will then happen for the consulting business? Okay. Well, the consulting business, they've got a much easier situation. They're going to be able to take external equity. They can IPO. Audit firms won't be able to do that because they're regulated. It'll be like Vialto, but much, much larger. They'll be growing the business. It'll be new Accenture. And for them, I think it's going to be happy days not having to subsidize the audit business. So that then raises the question, do we think it will actually happen? I'd love your comments, okay? So those of you out in the audience, do you think EY will actually split? So let's see what that is. Join the conversation, write in the comments box. Do you think EY will actually split? Now, we did ask this on LinkedIn, And in terms of what people said then, we had 83% said EY will actually split. Only 17% said they won't split. So the vast, vast majority of people out there, certainly in my LinkedIn world, and I appreciate it's not a random sample, but the vast majority think that EY will actually split. How long it will take, I don't know. Steve Asher there going, yes. Any other comments coming? Let's flash them up. Somebody else, yes. Everett Hullerman, an old colleague of mine from my Anderson days, I think they will. Eric Howelson says no. Interested to hear your reasons, Eric. So put those in. That's another yes. So we're seeing yes, Jam today. So I think we're seeing, Mary, yes, probably again what I saw on LinkedIn, probably another 80-20 saying that it will happen. That then raises the question, of course, if they are going to have a split, how deep a split is it going to be? And these are the choices that I'm going to give you, having heard what we said. And let me know what you think. Do you think if they split, it's going to be everything? It's going to be all non-audit services? Do you think it's just going to be consulting? Do you think it's going to be consulting and some tax? Or do you think it's going to be nothing? So what do you think? We've got a few minutes left. What do you think? If a split happens, how big a split do you think it is going to be? So interested in your comments there. Again, we did look at this on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, the answers were as follows. 52%, so just half, thought everything would go, all non-audit services. 19% said just consulting, 16% said consulting and some tax, and 12% in that survey said it won't happen. So again, whether you take the first survey that said 18 or the second one that said 12, it's clear that everybody thinks that something is going to happen. Joy Hill, shout out to Joy. She says, yes, it's going to happen. Steve Asher says consulting only. I mean, there is a better argument for tax to stay behind, because tax is more integral. You can't audit a company if you don't understand their tax. And some of the tax compliance stuff, you can see all that. You know, somebody has to audit the tax number in the accounts. So you can see that. But yeah, we're getting different views. Depending on which service line has less profits. Yeah, I mean, I suppose they're likely to spit out the more profitable ones, and the power is going to be with the more profitable one. My gut feeling is that this might get salami sliced, and bit by bit it will be spun out. So I think the consulting bit, that's the big one, will be split out. What happens to global mobility? I don't know. Will global mobility go with consulting, or will they be sent out separately? One of the beauties of the Vialto arrangement is they're pure play. You know, they are a global mobility boutique. They don't even have the other parts of people advisory services, the executive reward or the employment tax or pensions, all those other, or organizational design. They don't have those areas. So they are pure play. They are a very, very large boutique. So there is an argument for saying having a few, and you might actually find greater value if you salami slice and do a series of IPOs. So, you know, nobody knows. We've reached the end of our hour. I'm going to bring back our guests, our regular guests, Pat and Julia, and we're going to finish up the conversation with Pat and Julia. Now, I know Pat and Julia, you both have experience of working for the Big Four, and we haven't rehearsed this, but what do you guys think is likely to happen? What would be your best guess? Pat, do you want to go first? Julia,
I think you're right about the salami analogy. I think that they'll carve off pieces that they can. And of course, when they do that, they'll have to be careful that the consulting business has some annuity revenue, some sort of, you know, long-term engagement that's, you know, administration or outsourcing or something along those lines. Because if it's just projects, consulting projects, it'll be difficult to predict the revenues for this new business. So,
yeah, I mean, if we take Accenture, for example, I mean, an awful large percentage of Accenture's revenue these days is actually outsourcing,
right?
And big tech projects. So I think they do have a lot of an annuity business in there. It doesn't have to be audit to be annuity. And maybe that's the way that some of these, you know, that EY Consulting will move even more if they split out. Julia, what's your perspective?
I agree with Mike Hibbert. Yeah, so he's saying audit and related services, leaving the rest behind.
Okay, so Mike is saying, let's just put this up. Don't agree. It will almost certainly be audit and related services, leaving the rest behind. So are you suggesting, Mike, I don't know if he can hear us, is he suggesting that actually they spin off audit and everything else stays? Or he's saying that audit will stay and they'll spin off everything else but audit?
Parts.
Yeah. Because I mean, I had thought about that at the time. Could it be the other way around? Given that 2/3 of the business is non-audit, would you actually go the route of spinning off audit and keeping the non-audit separate? To me, that doesn't work as an idea, because audit is regulated, and you probably have to get approval from 170 different regulators around the world, which you wouldn't have to do if it was the non-audit stuff that was being spun out. And also the audit side can't be IPO'd or take external equity in the same way. And also the value isn't there. The money is in, Mike's saying spin off audit. I don't think so, Mike. I think it's going to be the other way around. I think, technically it could be spinning off audit, but audit will stay as a partnership and everything else will go. I can see your logic for that way around. I'm just not sure financially how it could work with all the regulation and where the value is. Interesting thoughts, and we'll find out, I suppose, in over the next 6 to 12 months exactly what's happening. Anybody at EY, these are obviously hugely exciting times and probably hugely worrying times. Let's just see what Chris Henry said. We had Mike wants to take a wager on not spun up. Okay, you heard it here first on air. I'm going to have a wager with Mike Hebbett on that. So Chris Henry says, now that it's known that EY is on the market, you may find siloed offers for individual pieces rather than the whole. Maybe easier to swallow that way. Only question is whether EY will think they can get more from the sum of the parts. So, yeah, I agree with you, Chris. And in fact, one of the things I was wondering is, why was this leaked? Why was this in the press in the first place? Was this leaked just by accident? Was it leaked deliberately? And investment banks do that occasionally. They do leak things just to try and sniff out whether there's other buyers out there or other potential. So it may well be that this got leaked with a purpose and not by accident. But nobody knows, and I'm only guessing. Anyway, we've reached the end of our hour. It's been fascinating talking to everybody. And thank you so much, Pat and Julia. And we'll say goodbye to everybody. We are back next week when we're going to be talking about digital transformations. So hopefully we can see you all again this time next week. Take care, everybody, and have a great week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.